The Talk Shop live in Studio 255. This segment brought to you again by I-80 Towing and Automotive Services and our friends in Casper, Wyoming, pokesnews.com, delivering Pine Ridge barbecue sauce. Looking at that jalapeno barbecue sauce, that mustard, that honey mustard brand, and our friends making it in Casper, Wyoming. Got to appreciate those Wyoming-made products. Bill, I knew you from Glen Rock, Wyoming, as you and Roxy had the Four Aces, and then an establishment or two elsewhere in the town of Glen Rock, but been a long time. Been more than 20 years that I've known you in the.
I'm not that old.
I was working for North Park Transportation back then, and I was worried about liquor routings. The liquor routings either went to MPT or they went to 50/50 or they went 100%. Wyoming Express was the freight liner that we competed against back then. But in all those years, we are here today in Studio 255 at the Laramie Plains Civic Center, and you are a delegate, an elected precinct representative for Albany County. What does that entail? And you've been doing this since 2018. What's it entail to be a precinct representative?
So your primary job is to get the candidates elected. So you have a particular district that you're responsible for. You're supposed to organize the other party members in that district, go out, knock on some doors, and get them elected.
You do some legwork. You invest some time.
So
you do some time, you talent.
We're the trench guys.
And treasurer is that something that's involved as a precinct member, or doesn't have to be, but might be, or you time, talent, and treasure your investment, so to speak, or is it independent of that?
There's no monetary requirement, but you spend a little gas money.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. And you've enjoyed doing it since 2018.
Well, my wife enjoys me doing it, to be honest. But
well, we got you. But you have some strong feelings about what it means to be a party member, and what ideals do you take into the recently Wyoming had the Republican Party convention. Was it in Douglas, Wyoming?
It was in Douglas.
Yeah, Douglas. You talked about the first one being in Gillette and this one being in Douglas. How many days is it? Describe that function of the convention to our listeners.
Okay, so Thursday and Friday is committee meetings. So if you're not on a committee, you don't really have anything to do. And then Friday night there is a sort of welcome reception and dinner.
Okay.
And then the bulk of the business is done on Saturday. Right. So we started at 9 o'clock yesterday and finished up about 5:30.
What's on the itinerary the first day? Are you having speakers and different candidates come? Are candidates? So are they vying to be candidates in the party? How do they structure the?
By this time, most of the potential candidates have announced, primarily because they know the convention's coming up and they want to be able to meet the party members and
gain momentum. Right?
There might be one or two still out there, kind of testing the waters, but. Yeah, that's
by and large. If the convention comes and they haven't decided to be a delegate or not to be a delegate, then they're behind the game a little bit, aren't they?
A little bit, unless they are already established and well known and are just kind of playing the field to see which way the wind's blowing.
Right.
Right.
So what goals did you have as a precinct member attending Douglas, Wyoming's Wyoming Republican Party convention this year?
So there's basically four things that happen. They review the platform in the committee meetings. Mm-hmm. They look at rule changes, and they do these resolutions. None of that really interests me that much. The platform hasn't changed in 10 years.
Okay.
don't really think it needs to change.
20 or 25 different key platform planks and keys. The last time I looked at one, is that still correct?
It's still the same.
Yeah, okay.
In the last 10 years, it hasn't changed. The part that interests me is visiting with the other delegates, just to see where people are, what's on their minds, and who they may be supporting, and then an opportunity to meet and listen to the candidates for office. So almost everyone that has announced so far was at the convention. They only have 3 minutes formally,
Okay.
but they had what they call a trade show. So there was most of the candidates had a booth where you could go around and visit with them or their representatives.
In greater depth and
Yeah.
what have you. Now, is that
They had lots of propaganda to
is
hand
that
out.
time is that time on a specific day in the multi-day convention,
Again,
or is it all
things
days?
happen on Saturday.
Most of it's Saturday. Okay.
Thursday and Friday's committee meetings.
Right on.
So it's a long day, but it's a productive day, and there's a lot going on.
What of all of the beliefs of the Republican Party and you attending as a precinct member, is the Republican Party and the platform, are they in line with your thinking as a Republican Party member?
For the most part, I think so. It to me, it's more of a ranking. I mean, I'm really a small government guy,
Right.
and I'm a small government guy, but not because I don't like government, but I like freedom. You know, and too often it's hard to be free if you got too much government.
Okay.
And so the Constitution's pretty clear about the role of government.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a really good job of expanding that. And any opportunity there is to reduce the size of government, I'm 100% behind that. I'm a fiscal conservative. I think we spend too much money. I think the more money there is in government, the greater the risk of what's the word?
I ask questions here, Bill.
Yeah, but you're supposed to help me when I need it.
Shenanigans?
Well, fraud.
Fraud? Yeah.
That's not the word I want, but it carries the same
Deviance from,
meaning. Corruption.
that'd be deviance. Yeah.
Corruption.
Yeah.
That's the word. Because you can't have that much money in one place without somebody wanting a piece of it.
Some call it influence, don't they? Some
Well,
call it
whatever you want to.
Yeah, whatever word softens it for them. But you're talking straight, and I can certainly appreciate that. Have you witnessed the type of government that you appreciate and you're proud of today versus 10 or 20 years ago?
Oh no.
How come? Why the difference? Why the difference between decades?
Well,
Is it the
I
influence
think
of money?
No, I think it's it's the influence of money, but it's natural, Eric. Every institution wants to grow. It wants to get bigger.
Right.
It wants to have more influence. It wants to have more power.
Yeah.
It's our job as citizens to keep that in check. This is a government of, by, and for the people. We don't belong to the government. They belong to us. And if we're not keeping them in check, they're just gonna. And it's nobody's fault. It's not. I'm not mad at anybody.
Sure. No, but it's an active responsibility.
It's
you
an active
believe.
responsibility. You should be going to city council meetings
Right.
to help them. To help them be fiscally responsible.
Right. And
To help them understand that it's your money.
And when the public asks questions, it's not because they're necessarily mad, is it?
It's not.
And it is healthy to ask questions.
Well, I can't see any argument against it, honestly.
Right.
Well,
Well,
I
George
think
Orwell.
if I was in that position, I want to be challenged.
I quoted George Orwell last week, and essentially Orwell said, freedom is is that right to question and ask questions that they could be uncomfortable for people to answer, but that really means you should definitely be asking those questions until everything happens in such a fashion that everybody's okay with the conversation, the deliberation.
I believe you can get there. I really do. But
did you have more people? Tell me about the convention. What was the mood? A lot of agreement, a lot of disagreement, some challenges on particular issues. What was contentious, or what was totally agreed on with no question whatsoever? I've heard varied reports. In one hand, it was a great convention, and there was great discussion, and there was great collaboration, and there was consensus. And then I've had some I read a Cowboy State Daily article where the Republican Party is noted by the Daily as calling for 80% compliance, honor, commitment to a platform that's a Republican Party platform, or you shouldn't be a Republican representative. What do you think about that versus the overall question is how'd the convention go?
So, I read some of that article you're referring to, and clearly
is that media just trying to stir stuff up?
Well,
is that my colleagues getting it wrong or getting it right?
They got it wrong. I'm not sure they got it intentionally wrong, but in my opinion, they got it wrong.
Okay.
Because there is no litmus test. There's nobody enforcing the platform. We're just trying to figure out, what does it mean to be a Republican? How do you define what a Republican is? And to me, we do that every time we sit down and review
every year,
and edit
right?
This platform.
Okay.
It is a statement of what a Republican is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to give you an analogy. I make beer commercially. Now, if I make beer and put a Budweiser label on it, I'm going to get in trouble. Why? Well,
that's not the recipe you're doing.
It's a fraud.
Yeah.
It's a fraud on the public, and it's damaging to the Budweiser brand. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And let me just say this. If the Democrat Party was as strong as they should be, which means appealing to more of the citizens of the state, we wouldn't have this issue. The problem is, if you're a Democrat, and you're not in Albany or Teton County, it's hard to get elected. And so, and I have another illustration of that. I have a good friend in Lander. He wanted to be sheriff of Fremont County. So he went down and registered and ran, and he was successful. He got elected. And he ran as a Republican, and I guarantee you that was the first and only time he ever voted Republican in his life. But he knew if he wanted to get elected, he had to identify as a Republican. It didn't make him a Republican. He didn't govern or administer the office as a Republican. And so what do we do as a party to try to vet candidates to make sure if they're going to represent the brand, that they're going to follow through with their principles? So that's all it's about. You're not going to have to take a loyalty oath or any of this fascist talk. It's just not what it is. With all due respect to Cowboy State Daily and anybody else.
Right on. Well, I wasn't in attendance, so I always take that if I'm not in the jury box, I really have a weakness, and I can't second guess all the evidence entirely, but I appreciate you being on the Talk Shop and being willing to discuss this. As you are a Republican, there are labels, and two of those labels are Democrat and Republican, and as such, I do agree that there's common understanding, with respect to those. But it seems like even parties have changed over. Is a 1963 John F. Kennedy Democrat? Is that the same as a Jimmy Carter 1980 Democrat?
Well,
Because I don't think today that the Ronald Reagan Republican is necessarily the same as the George Bush senior Republican that came. George Bush senior was vice president to Ronald Reagan, and it was responsible for sweeping the country in a landslide victory for Ronald Reagan in his first term. But as soon as, and frankly, as soon as anybody goes back to the debates of that era, Bush wasn't popular enough to beat Reagan. Reagan had the momentum, and his philosophies weren't exactly the same as even George Bush's. And when George Bush did become president, he went back on a lot of those things that he'd done with Reagan, and he went back to his former platform. My observation. I don't know if you would agree with that, but for me, it's evidence that the party changes within the party and is dynamic and fluid as we're all human.
Well, society changes. Life is about change.
Right on.
I voted for Jimmy Carter in 1976.
Were you a Republican or a Democrat, if you don't mind me asking at that time?
I was a dumb kid, is what I was.
Okay.
I was walking the streets of West Laramie handing out campaign brochures for Jimmy Carter. It was the biggest disappointment of my life, I think. I thought, and he was a principled man, but he'd been in the Navy, he had a pretty good resume, but he couldn't get it done. He surrounded himself with some really morally weak people, and that was the last Democrat I voted for. I didn't vote for Reagan, though. I voted for, I think his name was John Anderson. He was the third-party candidate.
Independent at that third
Yep.
party. Yeah. What's your impression of how difficult it is to get on the ballot as a third, fourth, fifth party candidate today?
Well, I've never looked at the details of it. Top of mind, it's too hard. I don't know. I don't know what's sacred about a two-party system. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but to me, it would serve the public if we could have a broader spectrum of ideas. I believe that it would be a check on the Democrats and Republicans.
It would stop a lot of the fraud if you're not going to represent the platform of the center of the party, then go
but nobody's
independent
willing to do that
right?
because you're not going to win. And I don't know how you fix it.
Yeah. Well,
if we're just talking idealistically, it'd be great.
So at the convention, it's important to represent 80% of the platform as determined by the Wyoming Republican Party. That's your view from a precinct standpoint. That makes sense, complete sense.
It's just clarity. It's honesty. It's what are you? Well, I'm a Republican. How do you define that? Well, I got a platform right here. You can read it for yourself. It's posted online. You don't have to ask.
In the 2026 legislative session, did the convention have conversation about whether the Republican Party representation in the legislature or in the federal government or in even local matters, are they representing true to the platform, or is there great deviation, or how is that? Is that even a topic?
It's not an official topic, but it's certainly a popular one among the delegates. And
Right.
so, to answer your question, I think the House was much closer to behaving the way we would want them to, or say adhering closer to the platform.
Right.
I think they had a real problem in the Senate, and it's because they really like to spend money over there.
Taylor Haynes in a podcast this week talked about former gubernatorial candidate for governor, two tries at that office in Wyoming, talked about vetting being so important of candidates. Would you agree with that statement, that it's important to do your homework on and research candidates that way before going to the polls?
You're going to open up a whole can of worms here, because we talk so much about people having the ability to vote and the right to vote. We never talk about what the responsibilities are. And honestly, if you haven't done your homework, right, and you're just looking at a name and a letter by it, I really don't know if you should be voting or not.
You ought to have
And I'm not saying somebody should prevent you from voting. I'm not
Should
going
we have
there.
qualifications for voters, Bill?
I'm not, well,
But that's kind of what it really comes down to. Should you be able to shoot a gun if you haven't had training to use a firearm,
yeah,
right?
nobody would advocate for that. Nobody. But let me be clear. I'm not trying to take anybody's rights away. I think everybody should vote, but I also think everybody should be informed.
Yeah. Well,
But one way we can help them, if you are what Trump calls a low information voter, if you are that person and you walk in there and you look at the ballot and it has a D by it or an R by it, that should mean something.
and it ought to be true to the expectations of somebody who reads the platform. And that's your perspective. If
That's
you're
my
not,
perspective. It's
and-
a
and-
definition. It's a
and if you're
brand.
not, yeah. And
It has meaning.
I actually think that voter information is critical, and I would agree that Taylor Haynes and you both stand behind doing your homework, looking into folks, knowing their resume, knowing, and in my reflection, that's the motivation and the inspiration for the Talk Shop to do the Candidate Awareness Tour 2026. Sure. I invite every single candidate in every single election. I've had precinct members that I've invited to it. Not all the precincts did I invite officially like I did local, state, and federal offices, but I document my invitations to each one of those levels so that I can give like time in like races to all candidates who are willing to invest the time to show up. They're willing to answer the questions. You, Bill, have given me the opportunity to launch the Citizens Comment. Along the campaign trail, I think too little gets answered for the citizens. I think that questions are really critical from the citizens. And I think there are a lot of people, they run campaigns, well, some would say in the basement. They don't show up. They don't respond. I have had less than half who even give the courtesy of a response as they seek public office. Isn't that remarkable? To me, that's very indicative of somebody that I don't have any interest voting for. If they won't show up when asked, if they won't appear and answer everybody's questions, whether they're a Democrat, Republican, or third party other, I want candidates who represent all people, and ultimately will do that having heard all voices and invested that accordingly. Is that an unrealistic expectation today, Mr. Hensley?
I'm going to take you down a little different road.
Good.
Because my wife ran 2 different campaigns for the House of Representatives from Albany County. And she was out there. She talked to anybody that wanted to talk to her in their first campaign.
Right.
And sometimes the journalists or the people holding forums are so biased that it becomes a trap.
Yeah.
And so she learned in her second campaign to avoid those kind of confrontations.
Now, what you're talking about, Bill, is
if I'm a candidate, I'm gonna
you gotta
worry
be
if I get a call from Eric, is this guy on the level or not?
You gotta be in it to win it, right?
Well, you do.
And if you're gonna invest the money, you're gonna invest the time.
It takes a tremendous amount of time.
And time
and
talent,
emotion.
And then I follow that.
Right.
And I've been to countless years of forums like you're talking about, like you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
They claim neutrality, and that's simply not honest, is it?
It's not honest.
It's not honest.
You know, the media can be the same way because they've got their little gotcha questions.
Yeah.
And they're laying traps for you.
I remember candidate after candidate said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" I said, "Bring your campaign materials. Bring your sign. We'll put that up behind you as we talk. I want people to have name, face. I want people to know who you are, what you stand for, where you come from, where you want to go, what's your vision, and why. Why should we elect you? What distinguishes you from the other candidates? These are. I have, fortunately, in 2022, 2024, and now in 2026, I will have some consistent archived material of interview after interview, showing people the path that we travel. And that's the way I keep it as consistent as I can, is to do the who, what, where, when, why, and how format to any given interview. And I always try to ask, just as I did starting out with you, where are we going to go with this?
Right.
Where do you want to take it? What do you want people to know specifically about you? I usually close every candidate awareness tour interview with the opportunity. Obviously, I didn't ask all the questions that I could have, and you came to answer a number of things. Perhaps I want to give you the last word. Summarize anything we should have asked, but we didn't. And I like to give them that, and that sometimes can be 30 minutes alone, that opportunity. But it's important to me that they not feel trapped, that they do see it as an opportunity for awareness. And yet I'm not going to be a dummy and be less than who I am. If there's a topic, I like to let people know, I plan on covering this, and like you and I have talked about the convention and the daily, another media outlets reporting depiction of that. The depiction that I'm speaking of with respect to the convention was, it seemed to represent that you couldn't be a Republican candidate if you were, or you shouldn't if you were, and whether you could or you shouldn't, those are two different sides of the fence, right? And yet I don't disagree. I don't disagree with, you don't want to be a fraud. There's enough speculation on what people are going to do in the public forum. I know locally and in state, as a part of that local, as well as federal, all branches, all levels of government, I see and observe public comment gets trampled. You get trampled as an individual, a citizen, trying to make comment in the local realm, in the state realm, because you know why? A legislator or a city council member, their time is not limited. You or I may get 3 minutes, Bill.
Right.
And that is a monopolization of the time of presentation, isn't it?
You're opening up another whole can of worms,
But it's important, Bill. If we don't
course
start talking about this
Right.
as members of society, it's just, to me, it's just as big a fraud as go to city council. We work for the people. Well, how do you say you work for the people if you limit the time and a staff member, be it a legislator, a city council member, they get unlimited time to cover an issue if they want. The filibuster is not dead in our world.
I sympathize with them because I was sitting there yesterday and they were going through these resolutions at the convention. And a resolution is nothing but just a statement of, we'd like to see you consider this. It's delivered to the legislatures, the Republican legislatures. It's just kind of a position. This is where the party's at. We'd like you to consider this.
We support
It's not
the
law,
Constitution,
it's not-
or we
right.
don't support the
It's
Constitution. We
general
think it needs
statements.
to be changed here or
But
there,
then-
right?
These delegates will get up there and start nitpicking and want to add and subtract. And that, well, it should say A, not B. And I think
Could, not shall.
I think people, when they're at the city council meeting, need to be concise, stay on the topic, not be mean, state their position, and sit down.
Yeah.
And then maybe we wouldn't have timekeepers. But on the other hand, I think that I'm probably going to get in trouble, but I think the city council sometimes is dismissive of and rude to some people who are making valid points. It's just something they don't want to hear.
Oh, for
And-
God's sake. Are
and
you
that-
serious?
You're being facetious now.
A little.
I think you've probably been a victim of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It runs real tender when people are talking about some of the largest investments of their life. And before they've even had a word to say, they come to the podium and they've been disrespected before they even get there. That's the representation I'd like to see change. That's the attitude.
I don't
the
think there's
perspective.
any excuse for that. because
That's the one I'd like to see.
We'll go
And
back to
I've-
my initial statement. The government works for us. We don't work for the government. And all too often, I think they get it a little bit backwards.
One of the things that I appreciate about you for many years, Bill, is you choose your words wisely. You're very intentional in what you say. It reminds me of E.F. Hutton. When you speak, I listen a little differently than I do at other times, and I think that's kind of that's a respect that's built over decades. So I thank you for your perspective on these topics, because they are a good test to what I do on the Talk Shop. I don't ever claim to be all right or all
Nobody
wrong.
is.
And so when I do have the opportunity, I will always give people more than 3 minutes, because I know how precious that time is to people. And you know
You're
what the
trying
mission
to get to something,
the
and that's what
mission-
they should be. They should be trying to get to the truth, to what it is that the people want. And you're not going to know that if you don't open your ears.
and it's
They'll
also
be glad to tell you.
It's also an interesting thing in city council. It's a nonpartisan area of government. That's what they say. Now, that's not how it happens, as both Republican and Democrat parties. They politic. They embrace certain candidates. There's voting recommendations with respect to parties, and after a certain point in time, there's these type of things. It doesn't stay nonpartisan as claimed. So you talk about forums where it's not kept that way. I've thought about a candidate challenge, and the candidate challenge debates is something that I thought about in 2024. I'm gonna declare the dates and invite candidates to it at various levels, key race expected races, and I'm gonna format it this way. This is the way that I've got it on design. You, as a candidate, submit 5 questions to your opponents. And
That's interesting.
and your opponents will also submit 5. As a moderator, I would have 5. And as the public, you have 5, but public has priority. In the Talk Shop Forum, the public's questions, hopefully they're in the cross questions. The public has hit on questions that are articulated by both candidates to one another, or multiple candidates. We have several microphones. We can do several candidates participating. We have a podium in Studio 255, so we could have one speaker at a time go and do timekeeping or what have you. But that's the core opportunity that I would like to make that. And I'm okay with, we can seat about 30 comfortably in the studio, so I don't have to look for a venue.
Right.
I don't have to, I don't have to contend with that. So I'd like to make that an opportunity that's available to people so they can have those opportunities. That's not something that's been done in any forum that I've seen. I've not seen anybody be able to ask each other questions, have questions asked of them, know that that's the format. It comes usually from the public submitting questions. However, the moderator will usually, they will change the question. They will maybe they merge them, maybe they bring them all together. And I can't say that they haven't done a splendid job at that. That's probably not an easy task to do. But in the planning stages, that's the way I look to do the 2026 election campaign, and I look to hold those heavy in June, so that people can go to the polls beginning July 1 prepared. And if they cast an absentee ballot as a military man or woman in service of our country beginning July 4th, they could look at an archive of interviews of recorded sessions, and they could go to the polls informed. How do you feel about that opportunity for our candidates?
I think it's a great idea. It goes back to what we were talking about before. The more you can inform the public, the more informed the voter is, the better for all of us.
Right.
I mean, we don't want people voting for something that they don't really want. But how do they know unless they've had an opportunity to research or get to know these candidates?
So when you look at what you're doing as a precinct member, you feel good about what you came away from Douglas with just yesterday, finishing up the heavy business day of Saturday?
I was glad it was over. But
Did you feel trapped?
The platform didn't change, so that was good. There were no fights about rules or resolutions. There was just a little nitpicking, editing.
What topics? Give us a nitpick topic.
Oh,
in your opinion.
Okay. Let me think a second. There's the hottest topic was regarding immigration, and so there was a line in the resolution that was encouraging legislation to make it easier for legal immigration.
Okay.
And some people thought that the language was too strong, that it was there was a fear that it might go retroactively to what they were calling anchor babies or the dreamers.
Okay.
Remember the dreamers? And so there was just this discussion about how to make sure that we're really just talking about legal immigration. And so there was a consensus there that immigration is great. Immigration is what keeps the country fresh and renewing, and you get strivers coming in and
that
shake
philosophic
things up a little bit.
That philosophic position comes from the origins of we're all immigrants.
Exactly.
Right?
And you hear that, but you want to be specific about like everything else you do in life, it has to be legal.
So if you dial into immigration, is there a belief system with respect to those that enter the country legally versus those, and how we handle those that have come in bypassing the rules in some fashion? Was that part of the topic, or was it strictly about making it easier or less easy to enter the country legally?
Okay, so the resolution was two parts, and so it was about maintaining a strong border, discouraging illegal immigration.
Okay.
And the counterpoint to that is, so it really was meant to illustrate how we feel about immigration. Legal immigration is to be encouraged. Illegal immigration is a threat to the country.
How
That's simple.
how many immigrants should be allowed into the United States annually, according to the Republican